Warning. This podcast contains humans.
Hey, how are you doing? This is Matt, and welcome to another MSPx. Now, it's been a while since I made one of these. It turns out that lockdown is a lot busier than I thought. In the last week, I've taught myself to service my own air conditioning units with mixed success, and I've said goodbye to a client of around 16 years. But you know, that's the coronavirus at work. It's creating a novel universe for us all. So if you are a listener to our audio podcast MSP, you'll probably be familiar with my obsession with brain chips, or brain-computer interfaces, as more sober minds prefer to call them. I prefer brain chips because it taps into the paranoia of the conspiracy theory crowd, who are probably hoping that this show will be about Bill Gates and his efforts to use viruses as the cover to inject us all with mind control chips. Now, depending on your point of view, either I've been paid off or I've been injected already. If I have been paid off, I do wish the check would hurry up and arrive, because my bunker cupboards are starting to look very bare. So if my corporate overlords are listening, it would be good if someone could turn up the don't care settings on my implant. Now, someone who truly does care about the settings on his implant is a guy in the US called Ian Burkhart. On MSP, we've covered quite a few developments in BCI, brain-computer interfaces. It's a really hot development area right now, as well as all the expected biomedical startups looking into the area for everything from boosting memory to restoring sight and increasing mobility for people suffering from all manner of medical conditions. It's also being examined as the new wave of consumer technology, especially as a way for interfacing with and controlling the next generations of both screen and screenless technology. So you see everyone from Microsoft to Facebook to Elon Musk all looking at different kinds of what sci-fi likes to call the neural lace development. Some of it is invasive, those brain chips that we're all so afraid of, and some of it looks more like a high school science experiment. You know, dime store tiaras covered in sensors and lots of trailing wires. Now, a couple of years ago, I remember reporting on a breakthrough at the University of Washington where 3 researchers were able to network 3 EEG brain reading devices to collaboratively play a game of Tetris. But for some people, the stakes are a lot higher than just playing a very old video game. Now, I mentioned a guy called Ian Burkhart earlier. His spinal injuries mean that he is completely paralyzed in the hands and the legs. But he does still retain movement in his shoulders and in his elbows. He had a chip implanted in his brain in 2014 to help him regain movement in his right arm and hand. And if you're wondering how it works, no, it isn't a robotic limb. It really does seem to do the impossible. It takes the impulses from his brain that tell his hand to pick up a shopping bag or some other object, and it feeds them to a kind of pressure cuff that he wears around his arm and hand. Now, that cuff stimulates the muscles in his hand and allows him to pick things up and, of course, to manipulate them. And over the course of the last 6 years since it was implanted, it's enabled him to develop to a point where he can do basic day-to-day tasks like, swipe a payment card, and even to play some video games, as well as, kind of more basic stuff like brushing his teeth. And all of that is absolutely amazing. It's life-changing for Mr. Burkhart, and it hints at enormous potential for other candidates for similar treatments. But as so often happens with these leaps and developments, it's actually the things that the scientists weren't expecting that really make your mind spin and, of course, make your face grin. So with the chip, Mr. Burkhart was able to touch and pick things up that he wasn't. So with the chip, Mr. Burkhart was able to touch and pick things up, but he wasn't able to feel them. And that made applying the right degree of pressure very difficult. But the researchers working with him at the Battelle Memorial Institute noticed that the implant would register a tiny trace when he touched an object. It turned out that there was an overlap in his brain between the areas that control motion and sensation. So the researchers boosted the signal and they added a ring to the cuff that he wears, and it literally vibrates when he touches something. And that gives Ian Burkhart and his implant the information that they both need to adjust his grip far more granularly and to restore at least a part of that sensation of touch. So a device that was designed to restore movement has in effect been hacked by the user's own brain, of course with the help of a team of fairly smart boffins. So when we talk about a future of enhanced human beings, healthy people who use devices like these to boost their own senses, their strength and their cognition, devices like this will be leading the way, restoring mobility to people like Ian Burkhart, but also potentially creating the first generation of superpowers in healthy people. Now, let me know what you think about brain computer interfaces in the comments section below. Or just tell me what weird new skills like central air servicing that you've had to learn since the lockdown started. I'll be back with another MSPx very soon. If you like the show, feel free to tell your friends and to subscribe. And you can also find our audio show, MSP, on your favourite podcatcher. Thank you for listening, and remember to take extra sensory precautions during these extra weird times.